You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. Joining me, as always, on a Monday is Christopher Johnson. If you guys didn't know, how you doing today, Chris?
Oh, I'm good. How you doing? You had a good weekend?
It wasn't too bad, so it goes by too soon. But
I hear that.
But we're back to some more 49ers news because it was kind of quiet for a second.
It was.
Now we got some news rolling in. The latest actually happened about 30 minutes ago, if that. The 49ers signed a new offensive lineman, a versatile one at that, former Bills, former Giant, John Feliciano, to a one-year deal. And a lot of people are saying, is this the new Daniel Brunskill for this offensive line? I mean, last season he played center for the Giants. Previous to that, I mean, it looks like he's pretty much played everything on the line at some point in his career. So definitely a versatile option for the 49ers. What do you think about this signing? Do you think this is the replacement for Brunskill?
Yeah, early returns look really, really good on the guy. I mean, I'm seeing like a lot of positivity so far. To your point, a little while ago when we were chatting offline, didn't get a chance to dig into him too much yet, but I mean, given his versatility, and that seems to be like the method or the mode right now happening with the Niners, like the positionless value. I mean, the positionless players that to provide that additional value. That's why I'm kind of perceiving, having a lot of experience at guard and center. It's interesting. It's just a one-year deal, kind of like maybe a prove it situation, see what he can provide. I mean, for all we know, he may not even stick, right? But that being said, I do get that impression that maybe he's coming in that swing tackle kind of position or role. I'll be interested to know when, we get to, maybe he has a presser or there's some sort of like Twitter interview or something like that a beat writer does with him to kind of get an idea for what, he sees his role being with the squad.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as the one-year deal goes, I wonder if, like, he is 31 years old, so I don't know if that played into the one-year deal, and maybe, if he does stick, right, if they like what they see in him this 1 year, maybe they'll follow up with another one-year deal after that. I'm not sure, but yeah, 31 years old, veteran. Like I said, he's played several positions. I believe the only position he has not played is right tackle. So he's not coming in to start at right tackle, but definitely will have a chance to compete. And I think, this is probably going to be depth for the most part. As soon as this news came out, it was like, oh, the 49ers signed another center. Well, why would they do that? I don't think they're looking at him as being the center that they're going to start, right? I mean, also I've heard that, him as a center, Giants fans weren't that big a fan of. But, again, if this is a depth signing, I think it's good. It offers that positional versatility, which they look for, especially in those depth signings that they bring in. So I think this is a good deal for the 49ers. And, I would expect to see Jake Brendel starting at center. But, it'll be interesting to see how this kind of shakes out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And honestly, like I'm really, the big names may have been kind of dissipating, as free agency has kind of carried on here, especially over the weekend. I mean, not just with the Niners, but league wide, I feel as though it was kind of quiet, if you will, the last couple of days.
It was.
I mean, that early tampering period was popping off. And then after that, it kind of went to a snail's pace. And there was some news here, sporadic here and there yesterday and today. But that being said, I'm really liking what the Niners are doing in regard to bolstering, the positions, that they've identified that they want more depth at, opportunities for guys to come in, possibly have experience in different roles and such. And really, what I'm seeing the Niners doing is really gearing up for just good, training camp battles. The cream will rise to the top. Others will be depth, and then obviously, whoever can't stick will either go to the practice squad or have to get released because you don't have 53. So I'm really liking what's happening in regard to just fortifying various positions. And really what I'm seeing is that they're really gearing up for some good competitions come training camp.
Yeah, and I also think addressing some of these positions with depth, probably means that, for example, right tackle hasn't been addressed. A good opportunity for the 49ers to trade up now because, again, we keep talking about the fact they're not going to need 11 picks. That is more true every time they make these depth signings. So I don't know. I feel like they might trade up for a right tackle, but Ferguson in the comments said Burford can play right tackle also, which could maybe have Feliciano move over to play guard. David Lombardi was literally just asked this
I was
on
just about to
Twitter,
address that. Yeah.
to which he said no. And remember, guys, he's never been wrong. He just said no. They are fortifying depth on the interior, so I don't expect with that they're looking to move guys around. Honestly, who they had as the starters last season were perfectly fine, aside from, of course, Mike McGlinchey, who is no longer here, right? So aside from that, I think they would like to keep most everything else the same on the offensive line if they can help it. That seems to be, the sense that I'm getting. But I agree with you, Chris. Like I'm liking some of these moves, these depth signings. It's not like super exciting, but as we know, depth is very important in this league, especially when you're a team who, wants to get to the Super Bowl, as we know the 49ers do. Having depth, having guys who can step in when someone gets hurt, that's really important. And another guy who they brought in was a defensive back, Miles Hartsfield, and he was someone who played on the Panthers. So there we go. Steve Wilkes once again making his presence felt here in San Francisco, right? So he was a undrafted free agent back in 2020. He's just 25 years old, but he has, once again, that positional versatility. He could play slot corner and he could play safety. So those are some of the things that, for me, it's very clear, especially on the secondary. That's something that they really want to emphasize, is having guys who can, play multiple positions. That's really important for depth, because if one guy gets hurt, you want to have a guy or two who can potentially fill in that spot, So I think it makes plenty of sense. Also, Hartsfield, someone who can play special teams. So I think that's going to help him, when it comes down to the cut to 53. Having that versatility plus the ability to play special teams will definitely help him out. So I see him making the 53 at this point. And because he's so young, I feel like this is a signing with low risk, potentially high reward, right? Because clearly Steve Wilkes, picked this guy out of the Panthers free agents as someone who they can bring in here and potentially continue to develop, or like I said, maybe he's only seen as depth, but even then, someone who Steve Wilkes feels strong enough about.
I'm with you. I totally agree. I mean, I've seen some reports already that this was kind of a Steve Wilkes signing, that he kind of gave his approval or his blessing, I guess you can say, that his advocacy for going after the player, and having been in his system before. We already know that when teams change coaches, especially head coaches, but even coordinators for that matter, they like to bring guys with them or have guys in the room that can speak to the scheme, speak to what to expect, just kind of like with just how the new and the nuance that's being brought by that new coach. So I'm excited about that. I think that with this signing, as well as what we were kind of saying before, I don't really feel as though there's a lot of glaring holes. I don't know if there's any really, for that matter. I mean, on both sides of the ball, we could probably pencil in, a starting 11 for offense and defense. That's probably not going to change, barring injury, which I don't ever want to, of course, think about. But that's probably not really going to change much. So, seeing these signings and then knowing that we have the draft, regardless if we're going to use 11 picks, which is not going to happen, or or 8 or 7 or whatever the case, really being able to fortify and then even look to the future, which I know we're going to have some draft conversations as the summer goes on. But I'm really liking it. I'm really liking it a lot. I think it kind of bodes the question. Like, I'm curious as to what you think about this. So with the two, recent defensive back signings, like, I'm curious what that means for Ambry Thomas. Like, what do you think about that? You think it's a a competition? They're bringing in competition, just trying to do what they can to, get the best out of everybody, or you potentially foresee him kind of moving on.
Yeah, I mean, Ambry Thomas, from what I've seen of him, and I was at training camp last
Yep.
year, he did not look like someone who was ready to start. I don't think the 49ers feel like he's someone who's ready to start either. And I think this move kind of tells you that, right?
Right.
Because if they felt that strongly about him, they probably wouldn't be bringing in more people. Although they need depth regardless, right? But
Sure.
I don't see him as being one of those guys. In fact, I'm kind of wondering. We'll see. It's early. We'll see how he looks in OTAs and training camp this season. But um, I'm kind of wondering if he'll even make the 53. To be
Yeah.
quite honest with you, so yeah, that's my
I'm kind of
thought, and
curious about that as well.
especially because Steve Wilkes. I mean, you can tell that Steve Wilkes is kind of making some of these moves in the secondary, especially. I'm kind of feeling like he has a vision for what he wants to do with the secondary. And this is something the 49ers haven't really had in a defensive coordinator in the Shanahan Lynch era, right? You think about Robert Saleh, linebackers background. Think about D'Amico, linebackers background. Chris Kosarick, kind of, he has the defensive line on lock. We don't have to worry about that, right? But it's always been like the secondary. It has always kind of been the thing that hasn't quite clicked or been as good as it could be compared to the other spots. You think about defensive line, you think about Fred Warner and those linebackers. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
it's always been the secondary that just hasn't been at quite on par with the rest of the defense. That being said, I feel that's why I love the signing or bringing in Steve Wilkes so much, because now they have that finally. And I think that's going to allow this defense to take a bit of an extra step, and he's going to be able to leave his blueprint or whatever on the defense, on the secondary. So I feel like I'm already kind of seeing some of that take shape.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And, one of the things I've always learned growing up is, you're going to make mistakes. You just don't want to, repeat them, or, you definitely want to learn from them, right? To try to avoid that again. And I'm getting to a place to where I'm becoming pleased and satisfied with how the team is fortifying itself against injury, right? Like, I personally love Jason Verrett. I just wish that, his career had gone differently. And, everyone under the sun was saying going into that 2021 season that we probably need to fortify, the defensive back room a little bit more. Then, of course, Jason Verrett tears his ACL the first game of the season. And then we had to kind of work our way through that circumstance, right? So I'm getting the impression that the team has learned from that. Might be somewhat, scarred from that, if you will, not just Jason Verrett, but other injuries at other positions for that matter. And that's what I'm kind of seeing with some of these signings as it relates to the positionless value, as well as, players that you're familiar with from the Steve Wilkes standpoint, and just fortifying the depth. So, there's going to be more.
Yeah.
There's going to be more. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the count is. I think they're like at 65 or something, maybe somewhere around there. So they're definitely going to pick up. Yeah, they're definitely going to pick up some more signings as well, in addition to the draft. So I'm really excited to see how it all shakes out.
And to me, this is kind of the time that the 49ers kind of enjoy almost, because I feel like those depth signings, those value signings, that's kind of for a team that's as stacked as the 49ers, those small signings, or quote unquote, those are the ones that are going to make a difference down the stretch. You know what I mean? Because at some point, some of these guys are going to have an opportunity to start, whether that be because of injury or, other reasons. And so this is kind of where you stake your claim, and where the 49ers can really, show that they're a good team, not just on the top level, but also down and in their depth. So I'm liking the signings. Some of the guys they've brought back. I mean, Ross Dwelly as well, tight end, now 6 years with the team. Now it's a 1-year deal for him. Seems like they're bringing back a lot of guys on just 1-year deals. T.Y. McGill as well from the defensive line. I have been a fan of his. Linebacker Flanagan Fowles. Now Flanagan Fowles is the interesting one because they had the option to tender him, and they decided not to. So for like a day or two, he was a free agent, but I think the intention was always to get him back on a 1-year deal. However, by not tendering him and doing it, as a free agent, they
saved
paid
about
him
like 800
less.
grand or so. Yeah.
Yeah, they paid him a little bit less. So it worked out for them. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, these signings, not big. It's not gonna, it feels like it doesn't move the needle a whole lot, but as far as depth goes, as value goes, I think these are all great signings for the team, and I totally expect that there will be more. Now, I know it hurts a little bit because we've been seeing a lot of guys leave the 49ers as well. I mean, just today we saw Jordan Willis get signed by the Raiders. That was a guy who I was really thinking and hoping would come back, also on a 1-year deal maybe, but he got swooped. Hassan Ridgeway, Maurice Hurst, there's a number of guys, especially on the defensive line, who have not come back, and they've gone to another team. So what do you think about that? I mean, this give and take of free agency, is there any guy that has left that you've just been, kind of gutted about?
I was kind of good about Emmanuel Mosley. I really thought
Yeah.
that we'd be able to have him come back on a deal that was good for both sides.
Great.
And I was kind of surprised that the $6 million didn't wasn't something that the Niners were wanting to match. I did see reports from the squad from the team saying that like they wanted to, at least as it relates to Emmanuel Mosley in particular, have the opportunity to match whatever deal he got out there. So I guess they were trying to give him less than that, but that was tough. It was definitely tough seeing Jordan Willis go today, because not that Jordan Willis was like a 7 or 8 sack producing guy every year and 20 tackles for loss. Just after his PED suspension, coming back and just being a silent, silent but deadly kind of player. He didn't have the biggest, most boisterous presence, but he did what he had to do. People respected him. He was a good team player. We will never forget him in his 2 big plays in that Packers game where he opened up the hole for Jimmy Ward to get that block of that field goal, and then of course he blocked that punt. So I mean, that's legendary stuff right there. Niner fans of this generation are always going to remember Jordan Willis, at least for those things. So, so those are the 2 thoughts about that. I do have some other thoughts about Dwelly and DFF, right? So I was actually kind of surprised. I was curious as to see, Dwelly get re-signed, at least at this point. Simply because, I don't know if I should say at this point, but I got the impression that he kind of got phased out of the game plan a lot of times last year. I wasn't sure what that was about. It's always weird, not knowing kind of the inner workings as to why players are getting more run versus others or whatever. But I'm glad that he came back. I hope they're able to utilize him more in the passing game. I think DFF was a good signing, to your point as well. I agree with all your points. I think that he's also going to have a strong presence on special teams, which I think is awesome. And special teams took a step this year, right? So, I think that was important to bring him back for that purpose as well. But what did you think about Dwelly? Or did you anticipate Dwelly coming back, or are you looking for him to have like a larger role in the offense? What are your thoughts there?
I was also surprised But at the same time, I feel like this happens almost every year where there's like a free agent that you're really not expecting to be back, but they have no market. So it's kind of like,
Yeah, it's true.
well, you're familiar with our system. For him, like, I know that he can block, so the 49ers trust him in that regard, and they always appreciate that from a tight end, right? So I think that was part of the reason that they decided to bring him back. I don't think we have the numbers on that deal quite yet. We just know that it's a 1-year deal because that, I think, got reported today. So we're still waiting on that, but I would assume it's a team friendly deal. You know what I mean? And now, so the 49ers have Kittle, they have Charlie Warner, and they have Ross Dwelly. And I don't expect the 49ers to be done at tight end. I mean, I think they're still going to draft a tight end, and I would expect relatively early, maybe with one of their third round picks, to be honest with you. I'd say between third and fifth round, they're going to target a tight end. And, they may target another free agent. They may, bring an undrafted free agent tight end too. And then at that point you have 5 guys and you can have them, compete on the totem pole after, George Kittle, right? Because he's clearly the tight end one. But yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I was a little surprised, yes, but I could totally understand it from the team standpoint. I mean, just to bring in someone that they're familiar with, someone they trust in terms of blocking and all that. So um, I get it. Ferguson here says Mayoko Dwelly, the offense's version of Dante Johnson, never leaving. Oh man, wouldn't that be something? I wouldn't hate it. I mean, these are the signings that people like, maybe question, but at the same time, it's like, this guy's never going to start. So why are we getting like, worked up about the sign? It's depth, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, depth is never a bad thing. And Dwelly certainly, they could do worse, right? Than Ross Dwelly as a depth and tight end. So yeah, it's fine. We got a question about Flanagan Fowles. Ferguson mentions the fact that he played safety in college. Do you think we draft a linebacker early or hope for similar success in late rounds or in drafted free agents to fill that third linebacker spot? Well, for one,
real quick,
yeah,
what's it looking like right now? We have Marcelino Ball. There's
yep,
obviously Warner, Dre, Greenlaw,
Oren Burks.
Flanagan Fowles, Oren Burks. Yeah. So
They have options. I mean, they have options. I feel like they'd be comfortable with those guys like duking it out for that third spot. Now, I do think they can also draft someone or bring in an undrafted. They always like to like develop guys. You think about how Flanagan Fowles started. You think about Aziz. Guys they developed. They always like to have a guy that's kind of waiting in the wings for this exact moment. When a guy like Aziz leaves for free agency. So, I think they might draft one in the later round potentially, but they might also just bring in an undrafted free agent. That's kind of how I'm seeing the linebacker position play out. But I think more than likely you're going to see one of the 3 guys who they already have in DFF, in Oren Burks or Marcelino McCrary Ball start at that third spot. And I shouldn't even say start because usually that the third linebacker is not starting in this defense. So, but whoever that guy will be is probably already on the roster.
yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't know that necessarily they'll go for a linebacker early. I think a lot of what we've been saying in a lot of our recent conversations and even today is that the core is there, right, for this team on both sides of the ball. For the purpose of this conversation, speaking about linebacker and defense and such, it could be a potential opportunity to where the board just falls to them and someone that's a highly coveted linebacker happens to be available. Maybe they do go get that guy because you have an opportunity to potentially what's it called, like reset the value of that position, right? If you can get a rookie that is playing equally as well as someone else that's older, that's going to be more expensive. I shouldn't say older, but vet that's more expensive, then maybe that's an opportunity to kind of like bump someone out of their position or something like that. So I think it's kind of a complicated answer. More so like what you said, it could happen early, but I can also see it happening later in the later rounds or undrafted. But given the way that the roster is constructed right now, I can see them a lot just letting the board kind of come to them.
Yep. And I see Brandon here asking about Feliciano. Joined a little late. We talked about him at the start of the show, but he's wondering, can he be our backup center? Basically, and as you pointed out, Feliciano has played so many positions. He's the backup everything, except for right tackle, I think, is the only one actually that he hasn't really played. So,
don't sleep on Jason Poe. People can't forget about my man Jason Poe. I want to see what he's looking like out there. Yeah.
I know it's so funny anytime that there's like a post about center. Like I think some people were even upset that they brought back Brendel because they're like, what about Jason Poe? Literally, like if you look at the comments section of just like anything having to do with center, Jason Poe, what about Jason Poe? I want to see Jason. Like I'm also excited for Jason Poe, but let's not get carried away.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
No.
And then and more so from like a backup standpoint, I'm glad that they brought back Brendel. You know what I'm saying? Because I know Shanahan covets that center position. We've seen it with the free agents that he's acquired. We've seen it with the contracts that have been given to the centers as well and such in his time being in San Francisco. So I think it makes sense. I mean, shoot, man, Brendel was a Pro Bowl alternate last year. So he wasn't, he didn't have that bad of a year, compared to his peers, relative to his peers, I should say. So I'm all about that. It was his first year, of course, being, a full-time starter. And I just hope that, all you can do is just get stronger and get better. Similar to Burford, as we kind of were speaking about earlier. So I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better about the interior right part of the offensive line. We will see how things shake out with right tackle. But, as we had conversations, I think going into the season last year, I was kind of shaky on the offensive line and the team. They settled all my concerns that I had, in that regard. So I trust that they're going to figure it out as to what's best for the right tackle position as well.
Yeah, and the right tackle position is important, it is really important. And that's why I increasingly think that they're going to probably trade up for one, because I think you need a day one starter. From what I've seen, it doesn't look like they're wanting to bring in a free agent to start, maybe compete, but I don't think that that's really what they're envisioning. I think they want to draft one, because if you
have to pay for them,
if right tackle isn't the first thing that you're getting in free agency, then that tells me you're probably not looking for your starter in free agency. Because looking at who's available, there aren't that many out there that are available right now that can start and you'd be happy with them starting, right? You don't want that much of a drop off between Mike McGlinchey and whoever comes next, if any drop off at all, right? So yeah, I think they draft someone. There's some great options. There's going to be some great options out there. I mean, it was Syracuse Pro Day today. Matthew Bergeron, I do like him. I believe the 49ers were at that Pro Day. Keeping tabs on the draft sheet, they were there. I believe all 32 teams were there, though. So, but I know Blake Freeland, he's a guy that, Brad is always talking about. So I know when Brad gets excited about an offensive lineman, it's because he looks good. So keep an eye on those guys. I mean, I think those guys would fit what the 49ers want to do. And the 49ers, it seems like they're poised to move up in the draft. Ferguson says, don't sleep on Burford at right tackle. He played his junior and senior year at UTSA at tackle, both left and right. It's possible. It's certainly possible. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, but I think just based on, I don't know. I don't know if they want to move Burford. I feel like he did so well that, at left guard, that they're just going to keep him there. So what do you think?
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I do remember my brother went to UTSA, actually, so he was pretty hyped when Burford came to the Niners last year, this past season, I should say. So I knew he had that kind of, I'm not sure if it was so much versatility. I think, the versatility is there because he has the experience. But my understanding is when he came to the team that was the plan for for the offensive line was for him to go to guard. I don't think he was ever really drafted with the idea of playing right tackle. Doesn't mean to say that they did that to get his feet wet and to get a feel for the game at this next level, and then maybe kick him out to right tackle. But as you know, when those things happen, you're creating holes at multiple positions, right? So, if he was to go to guard to tackle, then who do we have at guard? So it's just I think we'll probably get a better indication as training camp goes on. I mean, as we get into OTAs and then training camp. I think that will provide a clearer picture. I don't completely disagree with what Matt's saying, Ferguson here, but basically, I think he's probably got penciled in at least for guard for right now. But we also know, right, in the event of injury or something like that, or sickness or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, he has that experience and could kick out there. But we'll just see. We'll see. I think another thing I wanted to mention too when you were speaking a second ago, Steph, was another date that I'm really always interested to is June 1st, right? I'm always curious as to, like the surprise cuts and post June 1st cuts and all that kind of other kind of stuff due to, salary cap or because it's the new league year and all of that. So, if the Niners find a way to get some, because there's even, edge rushers that are still floating around out there.
There's so
right?
many.
And as time goes on, as we already know, I mean, their market, what their asking price is probably going to go down. They're going to want to play somewhere. And I know I'm biased, and I say this all the time. I realize I'm biased, but I think that San Francisco is an attractive team to play. I know players have their comments about the taxes and all that stuff, and I understand that part. But I'm saying as far as like the team, how it's constructed, the culture, the winning culture, the deep playoff runs as of late. It'll be interesting to see, moving forward, like, who else is still out there who wants to come our way.
Yeah, I mean, even Hargrave mentioned that, he wanted to go to the 49ers because of, he's heard great things about them. And obviously they're going to be in contention for something, right? Unless things go really awry. But look,
can I say something real quick? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to go back to offensive line. So please say what you were going to say.
Yeah, real quick. I'll make a comment about Hargrave. And this kind of flew under the radar. I didn't really see, your other podcasters or even beat writers mentioning this or whatever. Hargrave in his introductory press conference was talking about how the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line studied the 49ers defensive line, how they watch tape on them and stuff.
I saw that.
All that mess and crap and stuff I still see from Eagles fans and all this other stuff. Listen, as dominant as your defensive line was, your defensive, line coach, defensive coordinator, whoever, head coach, someone encouraged them and told them they needed to watch tape on our boys, about and what Hargrave said, his exact words were, getting upfield, playing on fire, that kind of stuff. So, hey, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? If we were being used as a model as to how they should play, step back a little bit as it relates to, how great you all are. So I had to put that out there because.
No, it speaks volumes to the 49ers defensive line, Chris Kosarek, how respected they are. You know what I mean? So I know there's always trash talking in football, but at the end of the day, I think respect.
They're the standard. They're the standard.
Respect is given where it's due, honestly, and the 49ers definitely in that conversation. Now, Chris, I think we've covered, most of the free agency news, at least since the last time that we spoke. Now, I'm curious now about your cruise. You were at the 49ers cruise. Yeah. We didn't get a chance to talk about it last week because it was just such a crazy free agency time, but I'm still very curious as to how that went for you. So first, tell us what the 49ers cruise was, because I didn't know what it was before you mentioned it to me, and how that experience go for you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you real quick. So Emily, my fiance, and I bought the tickets for the cruise it was Thanksgiving of 21, and it was going to be sailing. No, I'm sorry. It was Thanksgiving of 20, and it was going to be sailing in March of 2022. But then because of COVID and stuff, they pushed it back. So it was a regular cruise. It was a Royal Caribbean cruise. It was originally going to be leaving out of Tampa, but then when they pushed it back, it left out of Fort Lauderdale. And but on the cruise was, 49er players, legends, current players. So actually, I have it actually pulled up right here. So Jesse Sapolo was on there, Tim Collier, Dennis Brown. Some of y'all may listen to Dennis Brown's podcast that he does with, I think, Matt Barrows and David Lombardi. Steve Wallace, Doug Dubose, Ian Williams was on there, Bubba Paris. And then the current players were Ray McLeod and Eric Armstead. So it was awesome. I mean, there was like, beach parties, karaoke. They had autograph sessions. I mean, some people, I'm Chris J 1914 on Instagram and on Twitter. I put all the pictures up on there and stuff. And my brother and his girl, they won like the cornhole tournament and stuff. And it was the coolest part of the event, though, for real stuff, was just vibing. You know what I'm saying? Like being at the pool and just like kicking it with Ray. And he's on his phone and we're having drinks and we're like talking and stuff or whatever. Or Eric Armstead, in the gym, just, hanging out with him and just, it's just
he's in
random.
The gym.
Yeah. Some people actually got upset because he actually left the beach party to go work out and then he came back. I'm like, hey, listen, man, do you want him to be in the gym or do you not want him to be in the gym? So stop, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But no, that was really, it was a really cool experience because it's one of those circumstances where you may not have another opportunity to kind of, interact with those players like that. But yeah, listen, anyone who's hearing this, you know what I'm saying, on your channel or on your, on Spotify or wherever they get the podcasts and stuff, faithfulcruise.com. They do it every year. Check out the website. And then you can follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. There were about 300 Niner fans are on the boat. So,
nice.
It was cool. So it was a really good time.
Is the entire cruise just for this, or is it kind of like, along with other people?
Yeah. So it's a regular cruise. Just the Niner stuff happened to be on that cruise. You see what I'm saying? So you still had your regular people coming around and like people were all like, they were seeing us all on our Niner stuff. So just regular people didn't know who were players and who weren't players and stuff. Mm-hmm. So people were asking me, I'm like, no, man, I'm not on the team. I'm a player. But people asking those questions and stuff. But yeah, so we kind of like, we're just part of the regular cruise that was planned. So it went to the Bahamas. So left out of Fort Lauderdale. It was 5 days. Left out of Fort Lauderdale, made 2 stops in the Bahamas. And the players were cool. Like in the past, like Jerry Rice has been on it. Ricky Waters has been on it. Just different, just other different legends and stuff. Ian Williams has done it before. John Taylor's been on it. So from year to year, you never know. I was kind of upset because or just bummed out, I should say, not really upset, but Fred Warner was supposed to be on. So Fred Warner, Frank Gore, and Joe Staley were going to be on, but last minute their schedules changed, so they couldn't make it. Frank actually, after he got in his little, I almost said off field, but he's been off the field for a while, but he got into his little, like, I guess, personal issue or whatever. That's when he kind of got dropped from the lineup. But yeah, maybe maybe Joe and Fred will do it next year. But yeah, you got to check it out. I didn't know about it. And so I literally just we saw like an Instagram ad about it. I'm like, is this real? And then checked it out. And I'm like, we got our tickets like right away. So
yeah, I'm like, you never know with those Instagram ads, but I'm glad it was legit. I'm glad you had a good time. I mean, when you're chopping it up with the players, like, did you ask? Because like, I think the free agency had started like while you guys were on the cruise. So did you guys like ask, like, for example, Eric Armstead, like, what you think about this Hargrave signing?
So actually Hargrave hadn't gotten signed yet, but but at dinner one night, because their tables were right close to where we were in the dining room, and Eric and Ray were talking, and they were basically just having a conversation about Debo, right? I have never, it's so weird just hearing this, like in this kind of like, setting, but he basically was talking about how difficult it will be for Debo to replicate his 2021 season. Mm-hmm. So they were like, Debo's probably not going to have a year like that ever again, so on and so forth. And I'm like, wow, it's crazy hearing them say this, because we just regular people think that, right? And for him to, be talking about that as well. And they were talking about like the quarterback stuff, right? Giving their props to Jimmy, talking about the player experience, you know what I mean? One question that Eric was asked on a panel discussion that he and Ray did was, who's a player that didn't show up in practice that shows up during games? And the person that Eric identified was Juwan Jennings. He was like, man, he was actually laughing.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, he literally said this, Steph. He was like, Juwan Jennings can't catch a cold in practice, but in the game, he's like the man. And we were all like, oh man, like he's going after this guy. But
It's
like,
so
yeah,
true. It's so
yeah. And
true. I
then
remember training camp, that was like he
that
kept
was the
dropping
deal.
balls. But like I
Yeah,
think even Kyle Shanahan has said like
yeah, he turns it on. He
that's what he
al- he
does.
he talked about Debo too, though. He said Debo. He didn't say anything in respect to like how Debo didn't show up in practice, but what he said is Debo's the type of player that the big difference, the stark difference between practice Debo and like game Debo is unlike anything he's ever seen before. This is Eric Armstead talking about basically when the pads go on, Debo's a completely different player. But Ray referenced, he didn't reference a Niners player when he answered this question, but he was talking about Ben Roethlisberger. He said
Mm,
in practice that Ben didn't practice well, but during games back when Ben was on,
yeah.
that it was completely different than when he was practicing and stuff. So, but like, yeah, it was an awesome experience. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out in
Oh, for
the future.
sure.
Because on top of like getting to meet some former 49ers players and current, like
Yeah.
you get a vacation out of it too.
Oh, for
So
sure, without a doubt.
it
Yeah,
sounds
it was
pretty
awesome.
awesome. So what's the website again for anyone who's wondering?
Yeah, faithfulcruise.com. Faithfulcruise.com. Yep.
Faithcruise.com.
You go on
All
there and check it
right.
out.
Yeah, so next year we'll have to check
Go
that out.
deep.
I'll go
Yeah.
on vacation together.
Yeah.
Um, but look, thank you guys for tuning in today. This has been fun talking about the cruise, talking about 49ers free agency. We'll see what's on the docket for next week and see what other depth signings the 49ers have made. But Chris, thanks again for coming on a Monday as
Oh,
always.
of course. I appreciate you, Steph. Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All you guys that tuned in, make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. If you have not checked out my interview with Stefania Bell, make sure you guys check that out because she had amazing answers as to Brock Purdy's surgery, his
Yes.
timeline. We talked about Trey Lance. So go and find that on my channel. It should only be a few videos down. Make sure you check that out. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday.
You gotta get people to vote for you too, Steph.
Oh, dude, no, I already got eliminated in
Oh,
that.
you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
I
I
didn't
went.
notice it.
So for context, for those of you not aware, there was Rob, Gold Standard Network. He created a bracket of 49ers content creators, and I was on there. I had a tough draw, man. I had to go up against Jason Aponte, and he's my
That's right.
co-host
Stat
in
said he
Bully
did that on
Ball.
purpose. He put the post
Yeah,
together. Yeah,
he put anyone who did a podcast together against
that's
each
right.
other. So I went up against Jay, and it was cool though. Losing against Jay, I go down honorably.
Yeah,
That's my co-host. Big love for
that's
him. He
what's
actually
up.
just passed 1 million YouTube
Yeah,
views. That's huge for my guy. So, yeah, I mean, there's no one I would rather lose to than Jay. So that's totally okay with me.
no
But
doubt, no
if you
doubt.
guys haven't voted, I mean, vote in that bracket. I believe it's on Gold Standard Network on Twitter. So just for fun, it
Yep,
I think
good
the
time.
winner gets a small trophy at the end.
Set
So
of steak knives.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But guys, have a good rest of your Monday evening. I'll be back tomorrow with a prospect interview, so make sure you guys tune into that as well. Peace, everyone.